Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of In the Prog Seat. Yes, it's Tuesday night. We've got kind of a mixed crew here tonight. We've got Rand Kelly. We've got Rick LaBonte. We've got Neve the Prog Nerd. And we got Chuck Alvarez. What's happening, everybody?
Greetings, everyone. Greetings.
Hello. Good to be back.
How's everybody doing?
Doing good. We got Canada, we got California, we got the UK, and we got a couple New Yorkers. So and Rand is there. There's Rand. Okay,
there he is.
Rand is
I'm
doing
trying
his
to get that
disappearing
thing
act.
off the screen.
Wherever we are, we're in the Prague seat.
That's right. We are here on Zoom together. So tonight's topic, we thought it'd be kind of fun, and actually, it's actually kind of cool that we have this crew here because we got different ages, different eras, and the topic is: what are the first 5 progressive rock albums you ever acquired, whether you bought them with your own money or someone gave them to you, or you got a hand-me-down, or you got them at a garage sale, whatever. Doesn't matter how you got them, but those first 5 albums you ever got that are considered progressive rock. This was kind of an interesting chore here, an interesting experience to try and go back, at least for me anyway, to remember exactly which are the first ones that I bought. And I'll just say right off the bat that I didn't really get heavily into prog till much later. I liked some fringe bands and some popular prog bands, but I was more of a hard rock and metal guy till probably like the late 80s, early 90s. So that's when I really got into it heavy. But I did make some prog purchases in the 70s. So, and I know, Rand was there right in the thick of it when the genre was first starting. You lucky bastard. And, Chuck is probably similar to me. Rick
exactly.
Probably as well, maybe a little bit later. And Neve discovered prog, not that long ago. So that should be really interesting to see what are our 5 first acquisitions here. So I'm going to have ladies first, as always. Neve's going to kick us off. Then we're going to go to Rick, Rand, Chuck, and myself, and we'll keep going around the round till we get through our 5. So Neve, what was the first prog album you ever got?
Okay, so I'm going off ones that I bought with my own money because obviously my dad was around when prog started, so I had acquired a bunch of the older ones. So I'm just going to talk about the first one I got with my own money. So I got Dream Theater, Images and Words. I had the CD initially, but I can't find it, so I'll just show the vinyl. I bought it in HMV when it was still around in the UK, which is now gone bust. I listened to it and I didn't know it was a prog album. I listened to it and I had no idea what prog was or anything like that. I discovered it through someone's YouTube channel ages ago, and I really loved it. And I thought, I'm just gonna buy it. I'd listened to 2 tracks and I already wanted to buy it, and I just got it and enjoyed it ever since. It's not much of an interesting story, but it is an album that I still love very much.
One of the most important modern prog albums, prog metal, whatever you want to call it, but so important to
extremely.
Man, so many bands came in their wake after that. I mean, it's just they kind of took stuff from the 70s and the 80s and metal and prog and pop and just boom, here you go. Great choice.
What a great album. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Great album.
So
we can
bought that. How old were you when you bought that that album?
I'm nearly 20 now, so I got it when I was about 17 or 18.
Well, so you haven't had it that long.
I was 21 when it came out. And so that was a big deal. And I went and got it through a Columbia House package. Back in the day, you had to order a bunch, 11 or 7 CDs for a penny, and then you're on the hook for 5 more in the course of a couple of years. And Dream Theater was one of my picks. So it's interesting going back in time how we had to order it back then.
So let me ask you a question. You bring it up, Rick. So how many times, because I was guilty as hell of this, how many times did you constantly re-up with Columbia House to get the big batch of stuff for next to nothing? And then you wind up buying crap that you don't even like just because you got to fill out the contract, right?
Well, I was pretty, because some of it, I did that in the cassette days. So it was okay to repeat and buy, and we placed them on CDs. But there was a lot of things I was just gambling on. I heard Dream Theater was a good band, and I took a chance, and I got that one and Change of Season on the same order, and I'm very happy.
I would say, very cool. Very cool. All right, Rick,
I have a comment about that.
I don't know where to start when it comes to the definition of prog, because like you said, I didn't hear the term later on. I mean, I got this history of Rolling Stones, history of rock and roll, and it labeled progressive rock band. So I learned as I did my homework, probably in my teenage years, how they defined it, because I was born in 1970. So a lot of this stuff was happening. So by the time I'm around 10, 11, and 12, have the thirst for this stuff, I started inquiring the definition, but I wouldn't know it till at least the time you bought your CD of Dream Theater by then. But so I was buying prog records, didn't know it. I just want to be cool, because it was like playing some of this stuff on Detroit radio. It was very common across the radio that we were hearing Led Zeppelin, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all that. And there was a mismatch of songs that you didn't really know with prog. You know, we would hear Come Sail Away, and the next you know, it was behind a Beatles song. And you know, that's how classic rock was. It's so diverse. You didn't really understand or put it in categories until you do your history. And that's what I did. I become a historian. And my dad, being an album collector, he was right into the Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and all the Beatles, right up to the British invasion. So I kind of got to listen to music as the history of music went, because when I was growing up and 10 years old, all the way up to from 10, I was hearing Elvis, I was hearing the Beach Boys, the Four Seasons. So I already had an appetite for music, and they would buy me records. But when I started buying my own records, it was because I wanted to get things my dad didn't have. And one of my first prog records with my first money was Stars and Pepper to me. And that was a big deal to me, because I only knew She Loved You Yet, you know, and Hard Day's Night, the earlier stuff. My dad didn't go this far on his album collection. So for me, that was pretty progressive for my ears, just like the Tommy was. But the real progressive rock as we know it would be Dark Side of the Moon. You know, I mean, that was the classic one, because not only was I hearing so many songs on the FM dial, but I got to experience it from cover to cover. And so I started, like a lot of people, doing the vinyl days, but eventually I wanted to move on to cassette, because I want to be able to take this away with me, because the only time I get to hear it if I go to someone's house to listen to another stereo system if they had a record player. So, you know, it kind of reminds me of that movie, Guardian of the Galaxy. Remember the guy, Star-Lord with the Walkman? When they invented that, and I'm still like that with earbud today, my friends. I'll be doing this, doing whatever, hearing music. But that was me as a little kid trying to put these records on cassette and take it. So I didn't just have to be at home to listen to it. And when I did that, you started meeting friends and saying, oh, if you like that, you're going to like this. And I get into that later for my next pick. But that's how the progressive rock appetite came. But people said, you bought that? And you're what, 12? You know, that was a big deal. And they wanted to turn me on to other music like that.
Cool.
See, that's a great story right there. As a fellow 1970er, I went down a similar road, but I don't want to take anything from Brother Rand right now. So Rand, you're next.
Rand, you're up.
Am I next?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you want me to do that thing we talked about?
Uh-oh.
Okay. In 1967, there was no internet. There was just radio. And radio, as crazy as you might think, would play psychedelic and what we would call progressive music on AM radio. So in Eureka, California, where I grew up, I was hearing all of Inagata Devita at night. They'd play it at night. And they would play all this psychedelic acid rock and stuff. But my point is that when you walk into a store, you would just see A to Z. You had no categories. It was just considered music, and it was all mixed together. Now, they might have had a country section, of course, just to separate that. But to get into this idea of progressive music, you had to take chances. You had to figure things out. You had to look at album covers, song titles. I got to the point where when the synthesizer came out, if it had a Mini Moog on it or any kind of synthesizer or Mellotron, I would just buy it. automatically, figuring I would like it because I always liked the other ones that had those instruments. So you had that to work with, and you had Billboard magazine. And if you got to be friends with the guy at the store, then you could borrow the Billboard magazine and read up on things. And you go, oh, this, I just saw this. I'm going to go buy this. So you do things like that. But anyway, long story short, I'm going to do a quick thing in my first choice.
Oh, Revolver. Mhm.
I think for my going back, and we just called this pop, pop rock and roll. The Beatles changed my life so much. I mean, as an American boy at 11 years old, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan's show, and it just changed my life. I knew right then what I wanted to do. I wanted to play guitar and be a Beatles. So I studied the Beatles instead of school. And by the time this came out, and another thing you need to know too is there's 3 songs on here that weren't on the American Revolver. We didn't have I'm Only Sleeping, and we didn't have Dr. Robert, and we didn't have And Your Bird Can Sing, because those 3 songs were on an album called Yesterday and Today. A lot of people don't realize that now that the British releases came out in 1987, everything's changed. But this was a pretty psychedelic album, especially the last song, Tomorrow Never Knows. So progressing on to this one, if you can see this is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And this one, I'm sort of just kind of like cruising through them. To me, they all go together. Tomorrow Never Knows, and I'm Only Sleeping, and Dr. Robert with Sgt. Pepper, and this, to me, this is the birth of progressive rock, except they just didn't have a title for it at that time. But personally, I think this is my favorite Beatles album because it's so damn progressive. I Am the Walrus. I mean, come on. And Strawberry Fields Forever. Funny that John hated progressive music. After a while, he was the one doing the most of it. But yeah, that's the Beatles just changed my life. I mean, it just turned everything around overnight in 2 different ways. One, when they first showed up and the Beatlemania thing happened, Hard Day's Night, Help, and all that, and then Rubber Soul, and then Revolver, and then all the psychedelic stuff. And then when the Beatles or the White Album came out, they ditched that whole thing and just decided to play whatever they felt like playing, and using the band as the backup band for a solo singer, which is pretty much what that album is. Your Blues is the only song on that album where all 4 Beatles are playing in the same room at the same time.
It's like a lot,
but that's a lot to accept, but that's the way it was. You just had, we didn't have these terms until somebody, actually, I think it was Emerson, Lake and Palmer, some critic guy said they're playing classical music with a rock beat. So it became classical rock. And that's kind of how, and they said, so we're just trying to progress the music. And that's where the word progressive rock came from. And prog is just an abbreviation of that word.
Do you remember when the first time you heard the term progressive rock? Like maybe like year, like, do you remember like when?
Yeah. I think it was 1970 or 71, especially it had a lot to do with Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes. Yeah. And I got into Genesis later. I didn't get into them back then. I didn't hear them until 73. But by then they were calling it art rock. And it kind of developed into people describing the music, and they say, well, we're just trying to progress. We're trying to change so we don't sound like the other band. In those days, everybody wanted to sound different. They could do whatever they wanted. And then it got to the point where everybody had to sound the same and they couldn't do anything they wanted. Yeah. But yeah, I think 71 or 72 is really where you started seeing the term progressive rock. I think so. It's hard to remember though. It's been a long time, 50 years,
Yeah, right.
I only heard it read, the Rolling Stone Illustrated. There was a encyclopedia about history of rock and roll music, and they had a chapter just that. And then when I started thinking, hey, I like all these bands already underneath the channel, that helped me seek out the more.
Yeah. It really was. It's like, I like it, I don't like it. I mean, it's still that way now, but it's just gotten so many categories. I mean, the term prog how many subgenres, Pete, are there in the term prog when you open up a book about prog? There's like 50.
Oh man, there's
Yeah,
a
way
ton
too
of
many.
them. A ton of them.
I don't even know. I hear this term post rock. I have no clue what that means.
Why? You know,
What is it?
Although I do love talk, but you know, it's basically a combination of, I would say, like ambient music, chamber jazz, chamber classical, all mixed together. I'm just trying to define this, kind of similar to rock in opposition. You know,
I was going to say, it sounds like RIO. Like I got into Universe Zero back around 1992, and I just fell in love with Sue Du Ors and UZ and Heatwave. Those are and Heresy, and those are the four that I have.
Okay.
But yeah, I just didn't know. It's just that either I like it or I don't like it. But we call it In the Prog Seat because we had to call it something.
Exactly. All right, Chuck, how about you? Chuck, what was the first prog album you ever acquired?
Oh man, like Rick, born in 1970. You know, I was always pretty much open-minded. You know, growing up with 5 sisters in the house, you know, I was pretty much distant from my sisters. I didn't really do anything with them. I was a classic trained artist, as you all know. And I just spent most of my time in my bedroom listening to music. And I remember being in high school and I got introduced to this band. You know, before that I was listening to pop music, R&B, the original stages of hip hop music. You know, I was listening to rock music, but nothing classical until I went to high school. So you talk about mid 80s. I remember a friend of mine told me about this one band, and he told me, he says, you should start listening to this radio station if you want to get into rock music. And this album, I heard this one song late at night one time while I'm doing some homework. And this song basically changed my life when it came to music. And the album and the group is Yes Songs. It was the very first album that I purchased with my own money, an album that I literally waited until Tower Records down in Lower Manhattan opened up, and I went there and I purchased this on double cassette. And I listened to this until literally the tapes popped. I can't begin to tell you how much Close to the Edge, hearing Close to the Edge on radio late at night, which I couldn't believe that you had 5 guys that could play and sing like the way they did, like on this album right here. And it's this album right here, Yes Songs, was the very first progressive rock album that I've ever purchased. And still to this day, one of my favorite albums of all time.
I think it's the greatest live album ever, Chuck.
Love it.
It's my favorite.
I agree.
with
all
that
time.
statement.
I love it. I agree. It's an outstanding album.
It's a good first one to have, I think, right?
Yep.
You really got to get the LP of that because you get the artwork, and the booklet. Yeah.
Yeah, the LP is pretty massive, right? All sorts of goodies.
Huge.
You can get lost looking at the pictures. I was like, where am I?
So the first prog album I ever got. This is 1977. So in 1977, I was 11 years old, big Kiss fan. And that's basically what I was listening to, right? I was like, you know, anything more sophisticated than that, I was like, just give me Kiss Alive and Destroyer and Love Gun and blah, 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 right? But I had some cousins who lived on Long Island. We would go visit them, fairly often. And they were like a year, 2 or 3 years older than me. So went over there one weekend to visit, and they were big into music too. And they were playing this really cool album that had, parts of it were pretty hard rocking, a lot of keyboards, and this amazing violin. And I was like, wow, what is that? They're like, oh, it's this new album by this cool band called Kansas, Point of No Return. And I absolutely loved it. And I had to have it. So, of course, with my allowance money, I don't even remember how long afterwards, hearing it at their house and listening to it all weekend, I had to have this. And, again, back then, I didn't know what the hell prog was. To me, it was just another rock band, right? It's like, it's a little different than Kiss, a little more sophisticated than Kiss, but really, really cool. And I just absolutely loved it. And of course, Dust in the Wind was all over the radio at the time, but man, I really wanted to hear tracks like, Closet Chronicles and Lightning's Hand and, all the harder edge stuff and the
Paradox.
The Paradox, right? The Spider. And I was like, wow, this is great. And that started my lifelong love for this band. And then after this, of course, you can only go back, and all the stuff going backwards is pretty damn special too. But this was the first one I ever bought. So that is my first one. Back to Neve.
So this one I got, I'd say, a couple of years ago, so not as far back as everyone else. But going for the one by Yes. But in our collection at the time, it was quite small. We had, I think, Fragile and the Yes album, because those were my dad's two favorite Yes albums. And I walked into a record store with a friend of mine, and I saw the Yes logo, and I was like, I know that band. And I just picked up the album. I just had a look at it. I was like, this is really cool. I'm just gonna buy it. And it wasn't that expensive because I got it in the secondhand section. But I got home and I played it, and I thought, I kind of think this is better than those two albums, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it was one that I've held on to for a long time, and I kind of abandoned it for a long time because I listened to it and I put it away for about a year or so, and then I got back into prog, and I realized I like this. I need to hear more of this band. I need to hear more of this genre. Okay, Dad, where do I go from here?
Awaken
It. Yeah, it's a really special song to me, and Wondrous Stories as well. They're both my favorites on the album.
All right, so Neve, you have to say it one more time. Can you please repeat the name of the album that starts with an F?
Starts with an F.
The Yes album that you just mentioned it before.
What, Fragile?
Yes. Okay. You say it so much better than us Americans. Let me tell you.
We're like fragile.
We just say fragile.
It's boring the way we say it. I like the way you say it much better.
Fragile.
Fragile. It just sounds cooler. It's like fragile.
Probably how those guys said it too.
But nobody says it like this. Fragile.
Fragile. It's French.
I never even did till now.
There you go. That's a great story. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, going for the one is spectacular.
Oh my God.
It's in my top 5 now, officially.
Isn't it great, like when you have like a band that you love so much that has so many great albums, and like as the months go by, your favorites can change. I mean, it happens to me all the time.
Yes,
I'll be like ranking shows on
absolutely.
the channel, and then 6 months later, I'll be like thinking about the catalog. Like, yeah, you know what? I picked that 8 months ago, but now it would be this album, and it happens all the time. It's
All the time, yeah, definitely.
testament to a strong catalog, So
It's like that for us too, like in your generation coming in and listening to the past. But me discovering this channel, Pete did that to me too. I may be in my, 50 or late 40s when I started getting into the show, but I would go back and discover 10 albums are waiting for me. I got to check them out. They're called Shooting Star or whatever. So I kind of had relive those experiences just like you did. Some of them I didn't know about it because I'm in Canada, and the way geography works, you don't hear about all the bands. Just like some bands should be bigger than they are, but not everybody around the world know them.
I think it's a crime Saga aren't bigger, Rick.
Yeah.
Saga are great, and your country put out a great band. I mean,
I would think right here too should be bigger, and from UK, and it should be around the world respected like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin was, in my opinion. So anyway, go to my next choice. Being Canadian, that we see Rush logos everywhere, and in the high school wall, people drawing on their desks. And I used to be really good at that, making my own album cover logo. If I didn't know one, I'd make one up. I still do that today to my own CD that I write. But anyway, so when I was doing the Columbia House order for cassettes, I had to buy Rush stuff. I didn't even know what to want to buy. So it's like a gambling thing here. And like Pete said, you get, you can, you go for it. And it was, and I've already replaced most of my records. And so I went and got this. I had a deep disc in the deep closet to find these. Rush, Put 'Em Away was my first Rush cassette. And
Yeah.
and the drawn factor though was Spirit of Radio. I've heard that many times, so I knew I hope I get because I one of those I knew I was gonna get them. But I didn't know if it was on this album. Could they just show the titles back in the day? They didn't tell
Yeah,
you.
I mean there's no internet, right? So like you get these little ads, right? And you would just check off the box. You didn't know you had no clue what songs were on anything, right? You just order it.
Exactly. So when you're flipping it over and you read the track and it says Spirit of Radio, oh, I did the happy dance. I'm good. I knew. So I knew I had the one that I knew on the radio. Man, what a discovery that was. You're listening to it front and back. And with the cassettes, it makes you take time, just like records, to stop, pause, and flip it over. But makes you really take a chance to, digest it all. And again, if it wasn't for the album before, Pink Floyd and Sgt. Pepper, I would have never dived deep into this as a adventurous music. And that helped go into the next picture we'll be talking about. But this was really a game changer for me because not only sonically, and I love the way they mixed and headphones and all that, it was so important, but it made you want to think about, it wasn't just wine, women, and song like my classic rock. It was some deep thought lyrics. It was some deep stuff way over my head, but it sounded intellectual. And I was a kid back then that I always, because I skipped a grade and moved forward as a kid, I was always reading adult stuff, Stephen King books for ahead of my time, right? I should be 12 years old doing something else, but I was reading a book that was probably rated R if there was ever a rating. And so I would really fancy the fact that these guys were deep thinkers, and that also made me a fan.
Very cool.
That's a very well recorded album too.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff.
Absolutely. All right, Rands, what do you got?
Well, real quick, and I wanted to say it last time and I forgot, but I wanted to back up a little bit to Neve's choice of Dream Theater. And all I want to say about that is thank you, Derek Shulman.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't for him,
Those who are watching,
they wouldn't
have no idea what Rand is talking about. He actually signed them to Atco Records. So
yeah, they wouldn't be as big as they are without him, I don't think. Because that first album, I bought that first album. There was a guy at the Works, when I've talked about that store a lot, of course, but there was a guy there named Mike Asher, and he said, hey, this thing came in, you might like it. They call it progressive metal or something. You might want to try it. It was called Day and Dream. Is it Dream and Day or Day and Dream?
Dream and Day, yeah.
When Dream and Day unite. And I bought it and I put it on and I listened to it. And I thought, God, I love this stuff. But the singer is just, ugh. But he wasn't too bad. But there was a song on there called Light Fuse and Get Away, which I thought, well, that sounds like an outtake of a Rush album that never made it to the record. That's a great song. That's the one song on that album that really sticks out in my head. I just love Light Fuse and Get Away. And I made myself a mixtape for driving on cassette, and I actually used that song as one of my choices, but I digress. Anyways,
Charlie, if you're watching, Rand was just kidding.
Charlie Dominici, sorry. Did they re-record that entire album with James LaBrie?
I think they did like a fan club re-recording, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but I'd love to.
Yeah.
I bet it's on YouTube.
Charlie is not a bad singer. He just
not putting the guy down. I'm not.
No, because you know what? He did a couple. He resurfaced. I don't know, 8 years ago or 10 years ago, something like that. And he put together a new band called Dominici. It was the first thing he had done since Dream Theater, and it's Dream Theater-ish. He sounds perfectly fine. James is a better fit for that band. That's just what it came down to. So
when it came to that music was presented before the singer came in, so they didn't sing to his voice. They didn't sing to his pitch. Even James had to be around during passing audition. They knew his range, and he was part of it. He didn't have a lot of writing credits, as you learn, but he did sing a lot of the melodies. So they wrote to his voice. The other guy came in with a lot of work waiting for him, and to give him credit, he put his best foot forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I stand corrected. I didn't mean to put Charlie down.
Just busting your chops, Fran.
Oh, good.
I mean, when I was listening to it before anything else, it sounded fine. But anyways, to get out of that, I got a story to lead up to my next choice. We're going to band in school, in high school, band practice, what do you call it, for the symphonic band. And the teacher comes out and says, okay, we're not going to play today. We already got all our instruments out. We're ready to go. He says, you can just put your instruments away. Could have told us that earlier, but he decided not to. And he goes, we're going to listen to a record. And we listened to this entire record from start to finish, both sides. And everybody in that room, their jaw was just dropped. Why? Because this was the record.
Oh, man.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mhm.
My exposure to Terry Kath, one of my favorite guitar players of all time. I was watching Dick Cavett's show one time, and they asked him, how does it feel to be the greatest guitar player or whatever? And I swear to God, he either said, I'm the greatest guitar player in this chair, and maybe mentioned, have you heard Terry Kath of Chicago? But I can't remember if that's actually accurate, but I do know that he loved Terry Kath.
Yes.
He thought he was great. And this album, oh my God, every song is a freaking winner. We heard Introduction.
Introduction. Wow.
Introduction. And we're like I don't know if I think it was stage band. I don't think it was orchestral band, but yeah, it was stage band. And I was playing trumpet back then. And I heard that and just like, oh my God, how does Lee Lufname, is that how you say his name? Lufname? Lugain. How does Lee Lugain do that on a trumpet? I can barely get a note out, you know. It's like, that was just mind blowing. And then the very last song, well, we have our favorites, don't we, Pete? I love Home 58. Freeform Guitar is one of my favorites because it's so crazy and so raw. He doesn't use any effects. He just uses a Fender Stratocaster and a Fender Showman amp, just blasting out of the world. And South California Purples has a little homage to the Beatles' I Am the Walrus. And I'm a Man, of course, is a Spencer Davis tribute. Liberation.
Hell yeah.
Liberation is awesome. This song is in B flat, and Terry Kath can play, musicians will get this. He can play a bent note to F on the G string, and it actually shoots up an entire octave and feeds back. I've been trying to do that ever since I heard or figured out how to play like that, and it won't work in B flat. I can do it in A and I can do it in B. I can't do it in B flat. So I don't know if James Williams Guerrero, the producer, had switched the tape speed a little bit just to throw people off, but that's phenomenal the way that happens. And Liberation is killer. It's almost 15 minutes of just improv bliss, you know. People who say I hate Chicago need to listen to this. Man. The second and the third, fourth, Leibig Carnegie Hall, and 5, and I'm not too wild about 6, but 7 is incredible.
Great. Yeah.
It has a whole album that's just all jazz prog fusion.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, Chicago, awesome.
I was gonna say, Chuck and I is at the age where when we heard Chicago, it's 1982. How to say I'm sorry. And that's all I heard, and I didn't know this stuff. This was the late discovery. I was like in my, I think 24 before I learned about I'm the Man. I heard that version of classic rock. I said, I like that version better than Spencer Davis. I gotta get it. Then when they said it was Chicago, are you kidding me? You know, because at that time, the inspiration being played and all that stuff, I had no idea it's like a completely different band. And
well, their sound died with Terry Kath.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yep.
That's simple.
You know how
1978.
We whenever we do a show and we talk about Chicago, and then I see comments from people like, oh, Chicago, that sappy, horrible band. I can't believe you like them, Pete. And I'm like, that person has never heard any of these albums. They only know what they heard, those big radio hits of the 80s and onwards. And I'm like, you know what? Before you open your trap, go listen to that first album, the second album, the third album, the Carnegie Hall, the 5th album, the 7th album. I mean, come on. Anyway, that's okay.
Introduction itself will blow your mind.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
It's nearly Mahavishnu Orchestra like.
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah. Oh yeah.
But if you see them in concert, they do play a lot of that older stuff, and not well, at least the last time I saw them, they played a couple of hits from the '80s, but they actually went back in the past. And there was some people who actually had some grievance about it. And I said, "You kidding me? I was actually afraid the opposite. I got a lot more of the blast of the past." But they said, "I gotta admit, that is amazing stuff." And they went all out, you know. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears was first, right? They're the ones that kind of shot the cannon out first, that got on the radio and everything with, but they had actual hit singles that were huge, you know, but nobody was stretching. Nobody was doing anything wild. It's so funny. Real quick, it just takes about 15 seconds to tell this story. I was working in the Air Force in this barracks, and the guy had his TV on, and the dude on the TV was talking about horn bands like this. And he said something like, well, you know, the greatest horn band ever is Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I said, bullshit, what about Chicago? And then the guy on the TV goes, well, I guess you could also say Chicago. And the guy in the room next to me that lived there, he goes, dude, he heard you. He goes, you're psychic. That was 1971 when that happened, 50 years ago. I remember it just like it was yesterday. Have you heard the first Pete Cetera solo album, anybody?
No.
I haven't heard the whole thing, but I've heard songs from it.
It's really good. I mean, I've still got it on LP. It's way different than you might imagine.
Yeah.
He did it before he left Chicago, so he's still. It's not prog, but it's a rock album. You know, there's no pop singles on it or anything. It's pretty good. It's just called Pete Cetera.
Cool. All right, Chuck, back to you.
All right. My number 2 was another album as I was beginning to get into my classical rock phase. Was from a band that I rarely listen to nowadays. You don't hear me talking much or posting about them, but that doesn't mean that I don't love them. It's a album from 1975 from this great group, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group. What's it? Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. What's another album? What's it that when classic rock radio was classic rock radio, like especially during the evenings, you know, they would play like an album side. And to listen to Shine on You, You Crazy Diamond, and Welcome to the Machine, just going back and forth, you know, those two songs being played endlessly on radio, just amazing. One of the albums that I love very much. Once again, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here from 1975. Great album.
Yeah.
That's it.
Drop Dead classic. Drop Dead classic.
Oh, got the whole set there.
Oh yeah, this was good. Shine On. Have you seen this before, Pete?
Yes. I don't
Oh,
own
you
it.
You probably got it, huh?
No, I don't have it, but I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen
Oh,
Very expensive.
it. Yes.
it's got some really unique CDs. They made them all out of dark black, so you can't see through them. So if you break one, you're screwed.
Oh.
They can't be replaced. You got to be real careful.
So my second purchase basically goes in line with my first one. So this is also another album that I heard my cousins playing right around the same time as Point of No Return. And this album also was a big album. And then this band is probably borderline prog, but I find this album very much, at least most of it, a prog album. So it's kind of like maybe kind of questionable for some, but I'm going to count it because it's from that era, and it's one of the first things I ever got that was even considered somewhat prog. The Grand Illusion by Styx.
I knew it.
I mean, there's plenty of prog on here, man. I mean, you know,
of course, no, that album,
Castle Walls. I mean, the title track,
Miss America,
Stars. I mean, this is just amazing music. 3 great vocalists. Great keyboard player and singer, Dennis DeYoung. Tommy Shaw, wonderful singer, songwriter, guitar player. James Young, he's the big heavy rock guy in the band. Then you got the Pinozzo brothers. I mean, wonderfully produced album, just so grand and majestic. Yeah, it's just
What a great album cover.
yeah. So that's and again, this was both of these albums greatly influenced by my cousins. both females, I might add,
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
were listening to this stuff quite a bit. And my young ears were like, oh, even though I'm a Kiss fan, I like all that rocking stuff, the guys with the masks and the breathing fire. I can dig this. So, yeah.
Actually, I have a question very quickly. Rand, did you get to see Sticks and Kansas play together with Queen?
No, I saw Sticks in Kansas and Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So that was what, 75, right? 75?
No, it was 2011.
Okay. Oh, one of the recent.
Benoit David was singing with Yes,
Oh, okay. Mhm.
and John Davis was just about to join. It happened right after that.
Oh, okay.
That's right. I
All right.
forgot they did that tour together. Yeah.
But I saw
Mhm.
Kansas with the very first time I saw Kansas, if you want to know, was in '75 in Sacramento. They opened for Jefferson Starship.
Oh man, I know they blew them away, man.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, I've told this story before, it may be here, but there were people in the audience that during the Jefferson Starship song "Ride the Tiger," which was the first tune, they
Mhm.
put up a big old cardboard poster that with the eagle from "Song for America." it said Kansas right on big letters. It's only like 30 feet from where they're playing on the stage. I think that's kind of rude, isn't it?
Jefferson Starship were a good band. I mean,
No, they were. No, they actually
Starship were
were.
great.
They
Craig
were.
Chiquiso, you know, a lot of people don't know that Craig Chiquiso lived in Sacramento. A lot of us, I didn't know him, but a lot of us that hung out at the music store, the box room, knew Craig Chiquiso really well. He was in a kind of a reggae band called Steel Breeze, and they hired him out of that group into Jefferson Starship, and he came out with first, you know, just flying like high on that Dragonfly album. Great album.
yeah, absolutely. Cool.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. All right, Neve, you're number 3.
Okay, so I was slowly getting into like the bigger prog bands at this point, and I'd listened to a couple of Yes albums. I wanted to get more into kind of solo stuff because I was intrigued by all these really great musicians and if they had anything else to offer. So I found this in the cheap bins in the record store, and I was like, I know that guy, and I like his work on Close to the Edge, some of the most amazing keyboards work I think I've ever heard, and Fragile. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna give it a go. I got home, I put it on, and my dad didn't really like Rick Wakeman's solo stuff back in the day. He was more of just a classic Yes fan, and that was about it. So I was putting this on. He's like, I haven't heard this for years and years and years. And I was like, well, do you like it? And he was like, but I loved it. I loved it from start to finish. It's one of my favorite albums ever at this point, and I definitely prefer this one to Journey to the Center of the Universe, or Earth. Sorry, definitely prefer this one, but this is a very special one to me. And I just love the whole concept about it because I'm a bit of a history nut at heart, so it just kind of works. And I love the whole story behind the album and everything like that when I looked into it eventually. So this is my one, and I've had this one for a while now.
It's funny. I think I am the only person on this show, and I'm talking about, you know, with all of the in the prog seat folks, who actually has claimed to like Journey to the Center of the Earth better than that one. But everybody else seems to prefer that one.
I prefer that one as well.
I like that one too. I got the DVD of them doing that Journey to the Center of the Earth and a couple other shows he did, and it was amazing. I like that better than just the album itself because you get to see him do the work. But what a great choice you brought out.
Yeah,
it's one of the first CDs I got when I went to CDs. That would be like 89, but I would get that eventually because anything of his work, I wanted to get it because he was an opportunity.
Yeah, his early ones are just like so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Journey was brave because he debuted 4 brand new songs live.
Yeah.
None of us had heard those tunes before, you know. So we thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I went and saw them live too. And I think Renaissance opened, but it's hard for me to remember exactly. I know I went to see Renaissance twice, and I saw him on the Azure Dura tour. And after the show, I was able to nuzzle up against to work my way up to Annie Haslam, and we talked a little bit, and I asked for a hug, and she gave it to me. She also signed my concert ticket. Hugging Annie Haslam is one of the highlights of my life.
Well, that
You're
makes
like,
two
but
of us.
Rand, we didn't nuzzle now. We
She's very short.
Well, she's very tiny, exactly.
Delightful.
She's a tiny girl. Oh, she's so fun. I love her. I love her voice. She's my favorite female singer of all time.
Same here. Same here, Rand.
Absolutely.
I mentioned her a couple of weeks ago, and I also gave her a big giant hug. I asked her if I could hug her, and she let me hug her. I'm 6 feet tall, so she's pretty tiny.
Yeah, I watched that show. That was good. You chose Ashes Are Burning, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
My favorite album by them is Turn of the Cards, mainly because of Running Hard.
Same here.
I was going to say the
Russia,
same thing.
man.
That same
Russia.
song.
I just think Running Hard is so cool. I love the way they do that. I got that 50th anniversary Ashes Are Burning Blu-ray, and I watched that the other day. Oh, so nice.
Yep. Cool. All right, Rick, what do you got?
Okay, well, the same order that I had the Rush. I didn't know what to get, but I thought of being safe. And if anybody knows me today, I'm not a greatest hit guy. I usually get the albums and I do all that. But at that time, you're taking a gamble. But I heard it, I knew a couple of tunes, and you know what I'm talking about. I'll give you a couple of song titles: "Dust in the Wind," "Carry On Your Own Wish Done," "Point of No Return." So this was the best of Kansas, and it even says price right. I got a good deal on that order. And so, but like, if it wasn't for this, I had to get, when I got into the CD years, which was not that long, maybe 4 or 5 years after that, I would had to get any album that had all these songs on it, right? So, and that was a task in itself, because Hold On, what was one of the songs on there? Yeah, that wasn't available on the record yet. It was on one of the soundtracks of a movie. So one of the songs I had to really look for. But anyway, needless to say, it really got me going. And of course, my first CD I would have buy when I get to the CD world would be Left Overture, and made a real impact, because you only heard the hits, but when you can, and they were amazing, right? We all know why they got airway play. But when you heard the epic and the deep track, the deep tracks, and the one that really made an impression was Magnus Opus. And I'm saying,
oh yeah,
why was it not on here? I didn't understand the difference, because it was just as important to having these 8 hits with those deep sides. Then I knew I was a really prog listener, right? Because I knew that I wasn't just following trend. I really wanted more.
Cool.
I remember the version of Song for America on that album, on that compilation, is, I think, a minute and a half shorter.
Yeah, they cut it a little bit.
They cut like the middle interlude. Yeah. So what's it?
Isn't Song for America isn't like 7 minutes and
Song for America is
something like that?
Yeah, it's like a little over, I think, close to 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And on that version, I think it's a little over 6 minutes.
Well, I just remember when we were doing that Prague 10-minute epic song, it didn't cut it. It was so close, like 9 minutes or whatever. So I do recall it's like a couple seconds shy.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, Rand.
There's a little joke I just made up. If you don't like greatest hits, you can always go for the best of.
Surely.
I'll be here all
You
week.
don't like that? Get the essentials, right? Yes. Exactly.
I'll get me coat.
Uh-oh.
Okay,
He's here all week. Ba-dum-dum.
I got another story. This is just my experience. This is how it happened. I'm in the Air Force. We're in the barracks. There's a guy around the corner, because we lived in kind of a round barracks thing. It was brand new. And he comes over to me one night and he goes, "Hey, come here. I've been listening to the kind of music you like, and I've never heard you play this. So come in here and just sit down between these 2 speakers." And they were like separated by about 5 feet. He goes, "Just sit down right here between these 2 speakers. I want to play you something. It's going to take a while, whole side of an album. Just don't say a word, okay? Just sit and listen to it." And he cranked it up so loud. In the very beginning, I was imagining in my head like being run over by a steamroller with an atomic motor. What could I be describing? Any guesses?
Close to the
In
edge.
Crimson?
No. Are you done guessing?
Close to the edge, wasn't it? All right. I don't,
No, I hadn't come out yet. I'm talking 1971.
71. Okay.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer, maybe.
Dude,
Oh,
give that, man.
oh yeah,
Football.
Tarkus.
Yeah, this is the Steven Wilson massive
71,
remix kind of thing. You can't. I don't know if you can get this anymore. 3 discs. There's even a song on here that they don't even have a name for it. It's called what's it called? Unknown Ballad. That's when Steven Wilson made a conscious decision to never do anything for Emerson, Lake and Palmer again.
Wow.
Pissed him off. What an album! I mean, my God, that song Tarkus to this day rates as my favorite Emerson, Lake and Palmer song of all time. I mean, I just couldn't. I listened to it and I didn't even hardly know how to play piano. I taught myself how to play piano before I went in the Air Force. Listening to Abbey Road, side 2 of Abbey Road, I learned how to play that stuff. And then I heard Keith Emerson and I went, okay, well, no more piano for me. I'm just like not even going to go near that instrument. But I ended up doing that because I'm surrounded by keyboards. But anyways, I was just blown away. I just could not believe how good this album was. And I'm not like a lot of people where they don't like side 2. I like the whole thing. I think the whole album is great. And Neve, I agree with you. The best song on here is Don't Be Afraid, Man is Man-Made. That's my favorite song on the whole album.
That's mine. Yeah.
I know. I saw you say it.
I have a great
that's not
story
why I
attached
did
to
it.
that album as well.
Oh, it's so good. Bitches Crystal is just,
Yeah, Bitches Crystal is great. Yeah.
God. And then that one called The Time and a Place. I love that where he takes his bass and goes right in the beginning. But yeah, I mean, I even like Are You Ready, Eddie? Because I know they're singing to Eddie Alford and it's a big joke and everything, but it's rock and roll and I don't have a problem with it. These guys like to rock, you know? I mean, look at Pictures in Exhibition, the Nut Rocker. That's taking, I know Kim Fowley did it, but that's taking Tchaikovsky's God dang it. What is it? The Nutcracker, of course. Christmas tune that we've all heard, you know, and they just rock the hell out of it. And I just dig it. I like all ELP. I don't have a big problem with any of it.
Cool.
It's still a great album. I still love it.
Oh, yeah,
You know, I don't
I have a
listen
great
to it.
story attached to that album. My dad was the one that showed it to me because it was his favorite ELP album and he played it to death when he was probably around the same age as me. So I was still at college and I had an assignment, big assignment due the next day. And I was only about halfway done. So I was very, very slow. And I thought, you know, I'm going to listen to this album my dad's been talking about for ages and ages. And I just stopped. As soon as I heard those first few bars, I stopped everything and I was rushing to finish this English assignment. And I just took a walk around the giant field that we had at our college and listened to the whole thing twice over. And I fell in love with it completely. And by the time I got back, they had shut the computer room. So.
Well, I was driving all over Las Vegas listening to this thing on my 8-track, and people would get in my car. I had a Pinto at the time. And they'd go, what the hell are you listening to? They had no clue. And it's like you explain it to them and they go, I don't know who these people are. And not to mention, I don't like that music. But like I told everybody before, my car, my music, if you don't like it, get out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dig the tunes or use your thumb.
Man, you got to stop picking up strange people in Las Vegas.
Exactly.
You know, those were the days where you would pick up hitchhikers. I know it's stupid now, but back in the early 70s, it wasn't like what it is now. I mean, it was just different. You could tell, I could tell people who let's see, is they going to kill me or they're going to be really cool? You could tell, you know, I'm a very sensitive person anyway, but I could tell. But today I couldn't tell. I mean, there's too many Decepticons out there right now.
Yep.
I wouldn't know.
All right, Chuck. Sounds like it should be the title of a movie, Decepticons.
I got it from Transformers. Did I get that for Transformers? I think
yes, Decepticons. Oh man. All right.
Oh, speaking of, hey, before you take off, Chuck, I got to show you something because I've showed everybody else, but you haven't seen it yet.
Oh, nice. Uh-oh. Nice.
It's my Emerson Lake and Powell mobile. I got that from Mike Patton at the Works in Eureka.
Mhm. That's
Well,
awesome, man.
He just said I could have it because they didn't want it, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that album. A very underrated album. I love that album.
Oh God, the miracle is
Mhm.
incredible.
Yep.
I'll turn you on to the other two that you don't have, Chuck. One's called the Sprocket Sessions, which are the
Mhm.
demos to that, and then there's a
Okay.
live and concert album out too.
Oh, excellent. Mhm.
Yeah, they're both worth it.
Thanks, man. I
Sure,
appreciate
man.
it. Mhm.
I got your back, bro.
Thanks, man.
Next.
Oh man. Oh man. My number 3 is from one of my favorite prog bands, British prog bands, Jethro Tull,
Oh,
Living in the Past. You know, as I was saying, I was just learning about the band, and when I purchased this on CD, forgive me, on cassette tape, I didn't know at the time that these were all outtake songs that didn't appear on the first 5 or 6 albums that they had produced. And one of the things that actually propelled me towards this album was the live version of Dharma for One. You know, I remember hearing that on classic rock radio, and you get to hear Clive Bunker just drumming away. It's another great drummer that people don't even talk about nowadays. And Jethro Tull, when they had to, they rocked. They rocked hard. And if I'm mistaken, I think that was a Carnegie Hall when they played at the Carnegie Hall in 1970. And so you got to hear all of these beautiful songs on here. And Christmas song, Living in the Past, it's a song that my sister Betty and I always love listening to. But it's always that Dharma for One that always catches my heart here. But the whole entire compilation is pretty damn good. Jethro Tull's Living in the Past from 1974, I think, or 75, I think. I don't remember what year that was from.
I'm pretty sure it came up way before that, Chuck.
No, I'm
Because I
sorry.
saw
No,
it
you're
in
right.
the Air Force.
1972, forgive me.
Yeah,
1972.
I saw, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
what's interesting about that? So think about that, 1972. So
72.
they had only had, that was right after Aqualung, right?
Yes.
Aqualung.
Mhm.
Right. So just think about how much extra stuff they already had in the vaults that
Mhm.
early on after just a handful of albums out,
Mhm.
which, that's why none of us should be surprised when, Ian Anderson they keep releasing all these box sets, remaster and remix of all these classic Tull albums. And all of a sudden there are all these tracks that we've never heard before, because he has been stockpiling stuff since the early 70s.
Mhm.
I mean, he still probably has surprises up his sleeve.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
And have enough material to put out thick as a brick.
Yes.
So, 72. I mean, that's amazing, right? And
I know. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Remember, well, one of the things that we often talk about on the A Team is a passion play, an album that I love dearly. But
Great album.
there's another version of that from those that was scrapped, which is it's just as great, if
So
not
disaster
better.
tapes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Arguably even
Nightcap.
better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, mhm.
It's got a bottle of booze on the cover.
Yeah.
I love that record. I think it's actually better than a Passion Play.
Mhm. But I love a passion play, but
I do
everyone
too. It's
says the same
different.
thing
It's
as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, because the Chateau Disaster tapes, the original creation there actually has elements from what became Passion Play, as well as stuff from War Child. So it was kind of like this weird bastard child of what, or actually the bastard parent, I should say, right? That doesn't really sound right, but you know what I'm talking about. Those two albums were culled from the Chateau Disaster tapes, and listen to them today. That's a dynamite album. But the
Yes.
fact that Ian and the band hated it, and they went and scrapped it all and started up again. And what we got was Passion Play. And then a year after that, we got War Child. But man, I think that the original Vision, dynamite and heavy, probably the heaviest Tull album that they ever did, I think.
Mhm.
So, all right, my next choice. Anybody who knows me or has followed this channel for as long as I've been on know that I love live albums, right? And I especially love, especially when I was a kid, If I saw a record in the record stores that had a live photograph of a band playing live on stage, and they look kind of cool, and maybe they had a little smoke machine going, or if someone had a double neck, or if it looked really cool and it looked intriguing and it was a live shot, even if I didn't know who the hell the band was, I would probably buy it or consider buying it, right? So this album came out in 1977. I actually bought it in 78, but I remember like going through the albums. The store was called Record World in Middletown, New York, going through all the LP racks, and I come upon G, and I see this really cool, almost looked black and white, but it wasn't, because it was just really dark. These guys on stage, all this smoke and these cool lights, and I'm like,
I know who it is.
Yes,
Me too.
I'm like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell Genesis is from a hole in the wall, but I love this album cover, so I'm gonna buy it. And then again, remember that this is 78, so I'm already into Kiss. I just started listening to Kansas and Styx. I bought that first Meatloaf album. I'm listening to Boston, Paul McCartney and Wings, ELO. I already gotten Out of the Blue, which I didn't even think about today. That could have been considered sort of. But this was my first foray into the band Genesis, and I really like this a lot. And again, I don't know who Peter Gabriel is in 1978. No clue. As far as I'm concerned, looking at the track list, I'm like, oh, there's some guy named Phil Collins is singing. Some guy in a couple tracks named Bill Bruford. Don't know who that is, right? I don't know anything about
Thompson.
Chester Thompson, Steve Hack.
You're like a babe in the woods.
I don't know any of this. And I fell in love with this. But I remember thinking, specifically, like really loving the little medley at the end of this would have been side 2, I believe, end of disc 1. So they little snippet of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which moves right into the musical box, and it's really short. And I'm like, why do they like cut that off? Why is that so short? But really like falling in love with this. And then we'll talk about what came next after this. But this was my first introduction to Genesis. So I knew these songs with Phil singing first.
Same here.
Going backwards.
Same here.
Still, but I remember, like opening it up, and I think the CD doesn't have any of it. No, nothing. This is all we get. But I remember the LP open up, had all these great live photos. So for me, as a kid who just loved live albums, this was amazing. Again, very different. This is very different from this. This is very different from this. It's very different from Kiss and everything else I was listening to. So you could arguably say that this is the first British progressive rock album I ever heard.
Excellent. Wow. I still have that on I have that actually on cassette, CD a couple of times actually, and I also have the vinyl. The vinyl was gorgeous,
right? I mean,
the vinyl was the first thing I ever bought from. I mean, no, forgive me. It was the third thing I ever bought from Genesis. Before then, I knew nothing of their progressive past. What's that? I remember buying that album and listening to it as well, and I was like, wow, this is some heavy shit. The music was just outstanding on that. The playing, oh my goodness, the guys are just on fire there. Yeah. And I remember Tony Banks saying that when Bill Bruford came along and saw that they learned how to play their instruments. And Phil Collins, say what we say about him, about his 80s stuff, but, we all know that he was a great drummer at one time, but he's also a great singer too.
Oh,
yeah.
That's Brandon. Oh, yeah, his great drumming.
I agree. I agree.
I got to say something about that album, if I can, a little bit. I was disappointed in Seconds Out. And the only reason I was disappointed was the choice of songs that they left off. I think that thing should have started out with 11th Earl of Mar, not Squonk. I saw them on the end, then there were 3 tour, and they opened with 11th Earl of Mar, and they tore the Oakland Coliseum down. I mean, the indoor arena. It was just, everybody was just hopping up and down, dancing, just going crazy on those like pom 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 parts, that song is the perfect opening number. And then they put that Seconds Out, and it's like, how many songs are From Wind and Wuthering? One for the Vine, Afterglow. That's it. Am I right?
Well,
that-
you got to fit it all onto a double album set. So yeah, I'm sure there's probably
Yeah.
4 tracks missing.
And Supper's Ready take up a whole side. So
Yeah, exactly. But still great.
It's
And
a great album.
arguably, Afterglow on here is just
Oh.
Amazing.
right.
What's it? Dance on a Volcano, drum duet into Los Angeles. Oh,
amazing.
killer.
Amazing. Yeah, there's some really great stuff on here. I mean,
I love the production.
Yeah, it's-
same here. Same
Yeah.
here.
That's yeah.
Well, it's not much of a complaint from me. I was just hoping for 11th Earl of Mar live because there doesn't seem to be any anywhere. Even when they put out those 2 box sets, which I don't know if you can see them, but they put out this, and it's not on this.
It was supposed to have been, but
Oh, was it?
yeah,
I didn't know that.
that was supposed to have been the second of 3. And I guess that they were like they were kind of stingy with wanting to put out stuff that wasn't up to par sound wise. So what they did is that they just took whatever was recorded well and they put it onto the second disc and just left it as that.
I just bought all the Genesis albums on LP, 180 gram vinyl.
Excellent.
I want to show this off because you'll get a kick out of it. Trick of the Tail.
Oh,
Where's the hole?
wow, look at that.
Oh, nice.
Mustard yellow.
Yeah.
You can get these. They're not very expensive. But I mean, I'm not big colored vinyl nut, but I thought, you know what, that'd be cool to have a yellow album. I don't have a yellow album. But this is a great album. I mean, we were really surprised after Peter left. Well, we were in the dumps, like we'd lost our best girlfriend or something. Best friend or something. Like, a lot of us were really depressed. And after seeing The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway live, and then he leaves the band, it was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But when A Trick of the Tail came out, we put it on and listened to Dance on a Volcano. And the first thing I thought was, Peter didn't leave. He's still there.
It's Anthony Farrar's favorite.
Like Peter
Genesis
Gabriel.
album.
Phil sounds just like Peter Gabriel on that song. I swear to God, he does.
Yeah.
In my head,
perfect,
anyway.
It's a perfect album.
Oh,
perfect,
I know.
perfect.
I
Not one single
absolutely love it.
bad moment. I love it.
Me too.
Yeah, you're right. There's not a misplaced anything on that album, and yeah, it's just wonderful.
Cool.
All right.
All right, Neve, you're number 2.
So I don't usually go into a record store and buy something based on the artwork because I don't like judging a book by its cover or whatever. But I thought in this case that I would, because again, I knew like a very, very, very little amount about this band. And I saw the cover and I thought, this is such a beautiful cover. And I knew the name obviously through family and all that. But I bought it solely because of the artwork and how nice it looked. And I usually don't do that, but I thought in this case I might as well. And I got home and I was like, anyone recognize this album? Dad turns around like, what? When did you like Emerson, Lake and Palmer? They were like my favorite thing back in the early 70s. I was like, okay. So we went and we sat down, we listened to it. When I first heard that intro to The Barbarian, I was hooked to this album forever. I was stuck to it like glue.
Buzz bass.
It's such a great album. I think my favorite, it changes all the time with this album, my favorite track, but at the moment it's The Three Fates. I listen to that constantly at the moment. And Take a Pebble, absolutely, yeah. It's all so great. Yeah, it's a wonderful album and I'm glad I got it just because of the artwork.
You're not going to believe this. I avoided that album for a few months when I saw it in the store at the Air Force Base because of the writing. It looked like a country western album.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It does, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
looks like, it's from a western.
Mm-hmm.
And I never noticed. It took me a long time to notice that the dub is coming out of the guy's head. The head's on the left side of the record.
Yeah. I didn't realize there was an ear on the side for
I
so
didn't
long.
even realize there was a head there. I just saw the bird. And then I was looking
hold
at
that
it
up again.
closely
Hold
one
that up
night.
again, because I've had this album for a million years. I don't even know if I've ever noticed that.
You didn't notice that?
No.
The ear right there.
Wow, I never noticed that. I
I'm
just
not
look at the
seeing
bird. It's like a
anything.
beautiful bird, the cool logo. That's all I need to see.
Yeah.
Wow, I never.
Oh yeah,
That was my thought in the store.
I got
I
the
couldn't
old.
see any. Yeah, that's weird though, huh?
That's
A
great.
lot of people don't realize that's actually a head that
No, I've never.
connects to the bird.
I've never noticed it.
Mhm.
I will say there are days where I actually think that might be my favorite ELP album, even though
It
you know
is
you
my
always want to pick Brain Salad or Tarkus, but man, that debut is great.
Oh, it's an amazing debut. You know,
Yeah.
It's
mhm.
my favorite.
It's such a strong start. Such a strong start.
Absolutely.
I've got a tip for people who own CDs with a compressor. Turn it on when you listen to Take a Pebble, because if you don't, you won't hear all that beautiful stuff that Greg Lake does on the acoustic guitar in the middle. You'd be
Mhm.
driving along and the road noise and everything, and then it just drops down and you go, where's the sound? Then you turn it up really loud to hear it and you forget.
Mhm.
And then when it comes back with the big bombastic piano, you're like, wow, that's too loud. But if you have a compressor, it evens out all the sound and you can hear all the guitar work and everything like that. So yeah, just, I know that the new cars don't have CD players, but if you do have one with a compressor and you want to listen to that first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, that's a must. You must do that. Anything that's quiet, you want to use a compressor if you've got one, and I do in my Ford truck.
I don't want to compress, take away from the original intention of the artist.
Yeah, but then you're just driving around listening to nothing.
I'm getting nervous when I hear about remastering. Are they going to change it? Are they going to mess it up?
Oh,
I'm always
no.
getting nervous about that. And believe me,
Oh.
I bought enough versions of all these remasters to see that some are more better than others.
Mhm.
I
Right, Pete?
invented a term for that. It's called vapor trail.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Rick.
So next for me, the last of the cassettes, but they could, like Pete said, it's one of those situation where I need to fill in one more in order to complete the thing. And somebody was telling me, like I said in the beginning of the show, hey, if you really like that stuff, and I saw me with that Dark Side of Moon album underneath my arm, he said, you got to check out the band Yes. So I remembered that. And so in this particular order, just like a typical greatest hit kind of thing, it's called Classic Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a
Yes,
cool, okay. And so, and again, they could put in just like picture like what is it, Star-Lord. I put the the headphones on, put it in the Walkman. I start walking, probably walking one of the dogs or something like that, or go for a nature walk, because I'm always do that. And then just hearing it for the first time, and imagine that the first song I'm hearing for the first time ever with virgin ears is Part of the Sunrise.
Mhm.
I'm like, wow. Then the next track was Wondrous Story,
Mhm.
which we know goes on Go for the One. And then yours is No Disgrace Roundabout. That's side one. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, these guys are amazing. And I was so blown away. I was like, I thought Rush was it at this point. We're thinking nobody's adventurous as Rush until the side two, Starship Trooper, and then Long Distance Run. And then of course they threw a live version of a couple of tunes. And
Yours is
Just
no
You and I.
Mhm.
And again, I've seen all good people. But anyway, what an impression. So this will be the last order. I will go into the CD world. And I did the same thing when I did at Kansas. Anything with these songs on it, I'm getting those CDs. And then, which of course, you bought the whole discography of the main classic lineup. And so talk about Wondrous Story, because that's what it was for me. My whole universe was wide open about creativity. And of course, the next time I was, old enough, I went and saw them in a concert when I was about 19. I had to see this band that perform like this. So anyway, that's for this one.
I love that version of Seen All Good People. If
Yeah.
you've ever heard that version, it's a great version of that.
Yeah,
It's a pretty good version. I love that.
I
And that's
remember
what
buying
ones I
that.
bought.
I remember buying that in San Francisco in 1982. It was just being released. And I also got it on LP. And when you open up the LP, there's a 45 inside of there with the 2 live cuts.
Mhm.
And also, I have a theory that Atlantic Records put that out because Drama didn't sell well. and Asia had just come out, and it was selling like crazy on Geffen. And I think Atlantic was getting the message that the older Yes was the best. And then they set up that new Roger Dean photo, which is real attractive to people who like that art. And that's the one reason I went to it. And then when I looked at what tracks were on it, I go, well, I don't have these in this order on a cassette, so I might as well get it. Plus, I'm stranded down here in San Francisco, and all I have is this little boombox thing to listen to music, music in the apartment we were staying in. So I bought that, and I bought Asia, like at the same time, and the Go-Go's, but we don't have to talk about them. That was for my son. He liked the Go-Go's.
All right, Rand, what is your number 2?
Okay, well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm actually going to have to go out of chronological order as they were released, so I can tell my experience of hearing the band at the right year. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody do a drum roll. This album changed my life. I went crazy over this band. I heard Your Move on the radio in Las Vegas, and I called him. I've told this story before. I called him up. I said, "Who is that? Who is that with that female singer?" And he goes, "No, didn't play any female singer." I go, "Well, who was that I've Seen All Good People thing? Who did that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's a group from England called Yes." That's the Yes album. So I went down to the base exchange in the Air Force Base the very next day and bought it. Fell in love with it. And then not too long after that, March 19th, 1972, I saw them open for Black Sabbath with Bill Burford on drums and Rick Wakeman on keyboards. They were doing the Fragile tour. And oh my God, my head just went off. Mind blown. I told you this before, right, Pete? The opening band was Wild Turkey.
Yeah, great.
So I came up with this theory why Rick Wakeman chose Gary Pickford Hopkins to sing on Journey to the Center of the Earth, and why he also got to play on Black Sabbath's Bloody Sabbath, is because they got to know those guys on that tour.
Whoa.
They became friends.
Indeed.
But yeah, I mean, just mind-blowing. I was expecting Tony Kaye to be on keyboards, and I saw this guy with this really long blonde hair wearing this like red sequin blousey type thing. It wasn't the cape. He didn't have it. Probably had enough money for a cape at the time, so he had to settle for this. I've never seen a picture of this tour anywhere in Las Vegas. I wish I could see a photo from the Las Vegas show, but it was phenomenal. Wild Turkey, Yes, Black Sabbath, and they played a chunk of this. Nothing Off, Yes, Nothing Off, Time and a Word, Yes album, and Fragile, of course. They closed the show with Roundabout. I did a review on Forgotten Yesterdays, so if you want to read it. I'm not very good at reviewing, but it was the best I could do out of memory. But oh my God, that band has just changed my life. The Beatles were my favorite band of all time until I heard Yes. And coincidentally, on the very first Yes record, they do a Beatles cover.
Yes, they do.
It's just wonderful.
Cool. All right, Chuck, what do you got for number 2?
Oh man, my number 2, my favorite band of all time. At the time, like I said, I'm getting into the band from their later stuff, and didn't know anything about their progressive past. What to me as an 15-year-old, one of my classmates had made me like a CD. I mean, it was at the time for me. He made me like a mixtape of everything. From a couple of the solo artists on the band, and he also introduced me to Steve Hackett as well. So now you know that I'm talking about Genesis. And at the time, like I said, at the time I still didn't know anything about their progressive past, and I knew nothing of Steve Hackett as well until my buddy told me about him, but still wasn't a fan of his at the time. The album that I'm talking about is their first album as a trio, and then there were 3 from 1978. It's one of those albums that usually gets lost in the shuffle, but it's it's a great album, you know, which is still kind of in there with with their progressive past, but the songs are much shorter. And Mike Rutherford, although he plays very well in this album, is not Steve Hackett. But at the time, I remember listening to this album, I was like, wow, this is so much different from Invisible Touch, and as I got to listen to this album, this became one of my favorite albums of the time. And I bought this album and I listened to it ad nauseum for a few years, along with everything else, until I got Seconds Out. Seconds Out was the third album that I purchased from them, but I bought that on vinyl. So it's not that I couldn't listen. It wasn't like I could listen to it in my living room, because my father and my sister would have chased me out the house, and my mother. Whenever they went out, and so I would usually put it on and just listen to it. I'm like, wow, this is amazing stuff, man. But this album right here, I had it on cassette, and this album basically cemented my love for this band, this is where I came to right over here. Genesis, 1978, and then there were three, the first time that they did as a trio.
I'm still yet to hear that one.
Plenty to love on it.
Very, very much.
It's very strong, actually. Yeah. And
The Lady Lies is killer.
Yes.
Yeah, back in the day, I wasn't crazy about it. I have grown to really appreciate that album. And I actually, it's funny because I actually got Duke before I got that. I bought that after I got Duke, and I still to this day like Duke a little bit better. But I think, and then there were three, is really, really strong.
I think Duke is their last great album.
I would.
And unlike a lot of people who hate the Phil Collins stuff on their solo stuff, but I just think that every song on Duke is just perfect. And I think that that's their last great perfect album.
Yeah.
Everything else has a couple of tracks that, like Abacab, and you could think of a couple of songs in there that you just want to just trash the whole album. But and it's like that with everything else from that point onward. And then three, it's sentimental because it's the first album I ever purchased by them, and I love the album now more than I did back then, because there was a couple of songs in there I couldn't listen to, and then I just finally got used to them, and I love listening to it straight through.
That's strong stuff for sure. Good choice.
I always have to hear the album as a whole, right? So
Yes.
it's a body of work. I think that was a great record. There's no song that really jumped out to me like Duke and Trick of the Tail. Individual song, they're playing my conscience. I think about the title and I come in, but that album I had to hear as an entire body of work and say, wow, that was an experience. That was like, you know what I mean? You have to take it all in. You got to step back, get the big photo, right? It's that kind of thing. You can't just, piece by piece. And so that's why I feel the same way.
The first thing that stood out to me on that album was that Down and Out, the very first song, is in 5/4 time.
Yes.
And it's got such a great feel. I mean, Phil Collins is so good at weird time signatures.
His drumming throughout the entire album.
Yeah.
The unsung hero on this is Mike Rutherford. You get to hear how great of a bass player he is. He's an outstanding bass player. Whenever he sticks to just playing this just the bass, but he was amazing on this too, just like Tony as well. But I think that there was just a little bit too much Tony on here, if that's such
it's a very keyboard heavy album. Yeah, which but yeah, it's...
you guys, there's a lot of what people think is keyboards doing a lot of lead lines on that album, especially Burning Rope. It's actually Mike Rutherford on a Roland GR 505, not 505, 500 guitar synthesizer. I saw him use it on the end. Then there were three to it when they did Burning Rope, and he's playing all that stuff. Tony's just doing the chords.
Okay.
One of the things,
so he uses that a lot.
For me, I really missed the presence of Steve Hackett.
Oh yeah,
on that album especially. And what's interesting, that we're talking about this. So I don't know if anybody's heard this. Anthony Ferrara sent this to me. This is Genesis from Dijon, 1978, from that tour. And this is the first tour with Daryl Sturmer on guitar.
Man, does he rip on this tour, man.
He scorches all those songs on here. And I'm thinking, you got this guy who's such a great player. You bring him out on tour every year, and he just totally wows everybody. and you don't have him appear on the studio albums.
Mhm.
No disrespect to Michael Rutherford, because he's a fine musician, but man, you got this guy, Daryl Sturmer, who is just an amazing player, and you don't use him on any of the albums. I never understood that. I mean, he is amazing on this live set.
What's a well, if you ever
You know-
want to hear how great he is on what's you have to listen to Ripples. Especially the Chicago version, the definitive version of that song. He just kills on that song. Mhm.
Such a great player.
Mhm. Well, the
Oh,
story
I saw him.
I'm
I
sorry,
saw him
I'm
with
sorry.
Genesis.
Oh, I'm sorry. The story with them is that the reason they always because they wanted Chester and Darryl to play with them on studio, but the thing is that Genesis always would being that as they went on that they started doing more improvisation. By the time it was time to bring it out, they had already started making the song already. So they're like, well, we just let them play live. Mhm.
Yeah, well, what could have been. Anyway,
Maybe he was booked with John LaBonte. He played a lot of those albums.
Mhm.
Yeah, fine stuff.
Have you guys heard his brother's band called Sweet Bottom?
Sweet Bottom? I've heard of them before.
They're really good. I got one of their albums called Angels of the Deep, and the dude looks just like Daryl. You swear to God it's him. But I think his name is Bob. But anyways, yeah, that band is really good. They're kind of in that Yellow Jackets, Return to Forever kind of territory.
I like that. Mhm.
Nobody's singing. It's all just instrumental.
Cool. My number two, my first Rush purchase. This album came out in 1976. I didn't buy it till 78. Again, another live album, All the World's a Stage.
Great.
Love it.
Big heavy Rush. I played this over and over and over and over again. And this, of course, is the Rush live album. And Rush has this habit throughout their career where each live album kind of signifies like an end of an era, so to speak. So this is kind of like, this is after 2112. This has got stuff from Caress of Steel, Fly By Night, the first album. So this is probably not as progressive as they would get, although there is plenty of elements on here. But this would usher in, obviously, Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres and so on and so forth. And then, of course, Exit Stage Left would do the same thing, just a few short years later. So, but I love this album still. Played this to death. That was my fourth prog rock purchase.
Nice.
Back to
Rush always did that. Like you said, they would put an album, a live album, like a mark of a chapter that they'll pass. And we're going to give you a little piece of it that we did on stage, and we're moving on to bigger and better things or different things for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
It was a very guitar heavy album.
Oh, yeah.
It's a live album. Oh, I love that album.
Alex Lifeson, man, and Geddy Lee too. I mean, he's just such a fantastic bass player, and of course, we know Neil was one of the best of all times.
Everything about that thing is legendary. Even the venue, for people who know about Massey Hall, Toronto, that is a legendary venue, and for have them with such power and such strength and on the top of their game, right? They really got to shine.
Great stuff. All right, we have arrived at our number fives. Neve, what do you got?
So this is quite a while ago now, while I was getting into longer music. My best friend, her dad is really, really, really into prog, probably as much as my dad and myself. And I was round at her house and I was looking at their record collection because they were slowly starting to rebuild it because they'd just gotten down a load of stuff from their attic. And I saw this album that was interesting. I knew the band very well from my dad and all that. I only really knew their early stuff because that was my dad's favorite era of this band. So I took it home along with another couple of progressive rock classics, and it was the first one I put on the record player. And at this point, I was very much glued to my phone all the time. I was one of those really cringy kids. So what I did was I left all my social media stuff out of the room to just pay full attention because I wanted to. And I had just gotten back together with my boyfriend at that time, and he was also like, yeah, listen to this album, because you like this, listen to this. And that's Animals by Pink Floyd. It is my favorite album of all time. I put it on and I took out the insert with the lyrics. I sat on my bed and I was just reading them. as the music was going on. And just from the intro of Pigs on a Wing right to the end of the Pigs on a Wing Part 2, I fell in love with it, and I bought it as soon as I had enough money to get it. And to this day, I now own about 4 copies of it.
Chris Allo syndrome.
Yeah, it's my favorite album. It's my favorite Pink Floyd album, my favorite album of all time. And
My favorite too.
My favorite Pink album.
It's my favorite.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah.
well, great mind think alike.
Oh man,
Because it's
Absolutely.
such a
I totally
personal
remember
album.
when that came out.
Did you see them live that year?
No, I saw him in 1975. That's a whole show. I could do a whole show on that. We got to meet him that night and followed him up in the hotel in San Francisco, and we're sitting up in the bar with him at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel, and they were trying to just say, we don't know those guys. We don't know what they're doing. We were stoned. I welcomed David Gilmour getting out of his limo. By the way, they all 4 drive in 4 different limos. David Gilmour's getting out of his limo. I'm a big David Gilmour fan. I love his playing and everything for years. So when he's getting out of the car, I go shooting up to him and I shake his hand and I go, welcome to welcome to California. That's what I said. Welcome to California, David. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, thanks. And the guy goes, they were here last night, dude. And then we followed him up the elevator, and they asked me to push the button, and I'm like, I can't even function because David Gilmour's asking me to push the top floor. And Nick Mason says, I'll do it. And he reaches over and he hits my shoulder, and I just kind of bounce back like, wow, Nick Mason almost knocked me over. We were groupies, man. It was just crazy.
Weird, because my dad was such a big Pink Floyd fan and still is to this day, but he was never into this album. He was only really concerned with things like Ummagumma, Metal, that kind of era of Pink Floyd, like the really early stuff. And I think that I kind of pushed it on him a bit more, because I don't think he bought anything after Wish You Were Here, and I don't think he kept up with them. Because he said, well, when that album came out in 1977, he was just concerned with all the new wave stuff that was coming out in the UK and all that. So he wasn't really paying attention to prog anymore.
Neve, is your dad a musician or is he just listen?
Used to be. He used to be in a band. He was a bass player, like me.
Animals isn't an easy listen for some people. It's the lyrical content is really intense, especially on Dogs. Yeah. But I don't care about the lyrics. I want to listen to David Gilmour play on Dogs. I think that's his best playing anywhere ever of all time. I love that solo.
I love the lyrics on that. The lyrics are very personal on it. Matter of fact,
they're very relevant,
especially nowadays. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what I meant, but I mean, I love the lyrics. But a lot of people probably can't get into it, but could get into the music. That's where I was trying to venture out one way or another.
Challenging album, though, musically speaking, too. But
yeah.
Very cool. All right, Rick, how about your number 5?
Well, by this point in the game, I would have, but I'm in the CD world, and I would replace anything that I love on vinyl and all my cassettes. And of course, I would, prioritize that with Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, The Who, and get all these people. But during my, doing that, the next CD that I would buy that didn't have it on cassette, didn't have it on the album ever, and I bought it on a CD that was prog, was based on going to a party, and I would turn in somebody onto Uriah Heep, Demons and Wizards and stuff. And he said, oh, that's pretty cool. And I said, you got to try listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He said, yeah, but did you know that voice come from? That voice belonged from another act way before that. And it wasn't way before that. It was only like a year before. And I said, really? And he showed me this cover. And it's like pretty disturbing, and to say the least. And he said, sit back. You're going to listen to this. And I listened starting from the beginning and the end. And it was so uncanny. It was so unpredictable. And there was a lot of these peaks and valleys that I really like. And, and so I don't have to go, because we all know this album as being legendary. But for me, in my early 20s, this was like, wow, it's like this is like a relic that was like, because it wasn't common dialogue among my friends. It wasn't something I heard a lot of people talk about. It wasn't even played on the radio that much. in
No.
Detroit. So this was to me like a lost discovery, and I'm glad I have this unique relic that most of my friends didn't know. In fact, I had to turn on a lot of people into bands like this and Uriah Heep because they didn't do the research like I did. And today it's so much easier. And even for your generation, you got it on the keyboard and the internet, you can find it a lot quicker. We had to look for this. So my friend had the record, and I had to search long and hard to find this. Ultimately, I got this in Toronto when I went on a field trip with the school, I think, to see one of the plays. I think maybe the Phantom of the Opera or whatever. And there was this store I went to. So next time I went to Toronto, and I'm older, I said, I want to go to that store where I buy all these CDs. They probably have it. Sure enough. So 22, I think I was when I got this. And incredible, right?
That album cover spooked me so badly when I first saw it.
I have no memory of seeing that album cover. Here I am in the Air Force. There's a base exchange. They're selling all kinds of records. I didn't even know about King Crimson. I don't even remember anybody, even like any of my friends, playing it. They were doing Emerson, Lake and Palmer, yes, Procol Harum, Jethro Tull, Uriah Heep. That's nothing to it. The very first Uriah Heep album I ever heard was the one with the big ugly looking dragon lizard on it, which I like. I like that better than the British cover. No offense, but anyways, it was just called Uriah Heep, and I like but Demons and Wizards like that. I just love it.
Same here.
Cool. All right, Rand, you're final.
But Rick, you segued me real well into my last pick. This works really great. And now, since it's not a ranking video, I'm not going to be a mulligan or anything, but this is the truth. I bought, wait a minute. I got to do it like this because the American version of this album looked like this.
Oh.
The American version of Islands was just a big white cover with those tiny little gemstones on it, which is why they did it in the booklet. But the very first one I listened to, since I bought them both at the same time on 8-track, was this. I just chose this because I liked the art first. So I decided to play this first, and In the Wake of Poseidon, very first song I heard by King Crimson was Pictures of a City. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I couldn't even tell it was Greg Lake. And with an 8-track, you don't get any information. You just buy the tape, stick it into the player, and it gives you the song titles, the year it came out, and the record company. And if you're lucky, who produced it. And that's it. So I had no clue that was Greg Lake. And I'm just listening, digging, and everything like that. Then I put on, Tarkus, and I go, oh, that's really awesome. And I put back on the King Crimson. I couldn't tell. What the heck? He's got a distinctive voice. And then I find out later he's not even playing bass on the thing. Peter Giles is playing bass, and all that Lake did was just sing the lead vocals because Gordon Haskell couldn't, for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, I think that In the Wake of Poseidon was phenomenal. I just love it. And it's so funny about the LP. It's written in what they call I think it's called silver screen or something. But anyway, you open up the album. I don't have it, but you can't read the lyrics. You have to tilt it a certain way in the light.
Because I
have you guys ever had that?
Yeah, I have it on vinyl. Yeah, it's very difficult to read.
I know, you can't even read it, and then you listen to the title song In the Wake of Poseidon, and you go, "That's Epitaph." They use the same exact chords from Epitaph, and then just rewrote a melody and new lyrics, and it's the same speed, it's the same chord progressions, the same key, all in E minor. And a comment I want to say about 21st century, In the Court of the Crimson King album is, if you take off 21st Century Schizoid Man, you have a chill out, mellow album.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's great. I mean, that first song tears you apart, wears your psyche out so much that you need I Talk to the Wind just to get your breath.
Or Moonchild.
I Talk to the Breath. And yeah, Moonchild. And a lot of people complain about the jamming in Moonchild. I do videos like that on my keyboards almost every week. I love just that nonsense kind of stuff, you know. I don't care. I love that stuff. That's beautiful. You have to see a movie called Buffalo 66. End of story.
Thanks, Rand.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm going to continue to piggyback on our previous two, because I'm also with in the Quarter of the Crimson King as well. You know, the funny thing about this album is that I had this on vinyl. I purchased it on vinyl, and then a couple days later I purchased it on cassette tape. And I love this album. What I used to do is that every time I used to listen to it, I would always put this album up. Man, I remember having this album up in my bedroom. And sometimes my sisters used to come into my room to get dressed. I don't know why they would do that for. Well, my room was always very clean. And I had a mirror in there. So what would happen is that my sisters were afraid of this album cover. So what they would do is that they would either hide it. And one time what happened with this, and what angered me, is that my sisters were so petrified about this. So what they did is that they put this under my blanket. So lo and behold, I come home from school and I jump on my bed, and what happened? Exactly.
Oh man, that is horrible.
Yeah, my sisters, man. Oh man, I could never forgive them for that, man. You know, I was never able to replace the vinyl itself, but what I did is I always kept on to the album cover until it just fell apart. But getting back to this album, I remember listening to like an excerpt of the title track, and I heard it one night, and I was like, wow, who's that? You know, and then they probably like a year later they played it again when I remember I think I was still in high school at the time. And and a friend of mine had told me like a couple years even after that, and it's like, listen, you need to listen to King Crimson and stop messing around with that Genesis nonsense. So so this is the album that I got to listen to, and then I remembered in the Quarter of the Crimson King listening to that one song, and this whole album, you know, just like what Rand said, it's a very mellow album after the 21st century. But it's still, I could still understand why so many different groups were inspired by this album. You know, I hear stories that I'm sorry, guys. Oh gosh, oh boy, I'm very sorry about that, gentlemen.
Okay.
Here's the reason, Chuck.
Mellotron.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the Mellotron. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's what sets it. That's what set it apart from everything else, and except for the Moody Blues, they were doing it, you know.
Indeed.
Yes, mm-hmm. But they took it to like a different level. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would have picked them, but I didn't hear them for years. I didn't hear them until I got in the service. For some reason, that first bunch of albums that put out just kind of went around me somehow. I didn't know about them.
Very cool. Chuck, I got to tell you, if it was one of my siblings, well, I only have one sibling. If my sibling did that to me with that album, and then me knowing how much he, or in your sister's case, she detested that album cover, you know what I would have done after that? I would have taken that LP cover, I would have put some wire or string on it in the middle of the night, hang it on the other side of their door. So the first thing in the morning when she opens up that door, and that's the first thing she's going to see, you'd scare the shit out of her and be like, gotcha.
I had five sisters. So I don't know which one of the five had did it.
So you don't even know who was the guilty one.
Oh. They would never tell me.
Either way, I think my face would look like that if I found out about it. I mean, it'd be wide open, a lot of yelling coming out of who the heck did this?
Go to a shrink and say, how's your stress level, and pull that out.
So Pete, what
all
you
right
got?
So to finish us up here today, so I don't want to repeat any bands because I did buy other albums by some of the bands I've already mentioned, but coming up in 1980, very early in the year, two other first time bands for me. I don't remember which one I bought first, so I'm just going to throw them both at you. So the first Yes album I ever got was actually Drama.
I love
Because
that.
I had heard Roundabout on the radio and seen All Good People, and I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. But it wasn't until I heard Tempest Fugit on the radio,
Mhm.
I was like, ooh, I like that. Like, I gotta have that. So I went out and bought this, loved it. So this was actually my first Yes purchase as soon as it came out in 1980. And I also bought Pink Floyd's The Wall in 1980, right around the same time as well. It had already been out for like a year, but I, bought this and saw the movie. I hated the movie actually, but
Same here.
and you know what? Still to this day, and even when I first bought it, I'm not a huge fan of this album. I know
I'm not either. Sorry, Louis.
Yeah.
I much prefer their earlier stuff.
Same here. Same here.
And it's got its moments. It's got its moments.
Oh, absolutely, Neve. I think it's for me,
I like it.
half of it I think is very good to excellent, and the other half is okay.
Yeah.
For me, this would have been a better single album, but I know most people don't want to hear that, so I won't talk more about The Wall. It is what it is. I mean, I don't hate it. I just don't think it's the out and out classic that most people seem to. I'm Animals is my favorite Pink Floyd album. Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. Those are my three favorites. I prefer them over this. So
Same here.
Well,
I
then-
forgot
I
to,
like
I don't
that.
know why I forgot it, but I forgot to bring up my my first Pink Floyd that I heard. I would just say it was Metal, and Echoes just blew my mind.
Yeah,
But
Metal's
I forgot to bring it out, so it's just going to be an honorable mention again.
Metal is great. So there you have it, everybody. Neve, it's well past her bedtime, so we've got to
definitely.
get her. She's got to go off to Dreamland here, and I know for us East Coasters here, it's also getting a little late here. So, but we want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching. This was actually fun to go down memory lane a little bit and talk about some of the first prog rock albums we ever bought or acquired, whatever. So I want to thank Neve for joining us here tonight. This was a lot of fun.
Pleasure, Neve.
Had fun.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Nice
Chuck
to meet
for
everyone.
filling in for Sean and
Thank you.
Rick and Rand as well. So thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time.
All the damn time.
If you haven't checked out Neve the Prog Nerd, go on over to her channel. Give her some love over there. She publishes a lot of cool content on a regular basis. So, and if you haven't subscribed here by now, I'd be surprised if you haven't, but please click on that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We've got the link to our merch page, the link to our Ko-Fi page. We've got all sorts of cool See You Train. Brand, why don't you show off that wonderful t-shirt that you got on there and the mug. Gotta love the whale, right?
Yeah.
So, all that
I
available.
want to give Neve the Prog Nerd a plug. Check out her band Silly Lobster. They did a version of Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit. It's worth seeing.
Very cool. And by the way, you can also get Neve shirts as well at the same merch site as Sea of Tranquility.
Absolutely.
We share the same online vendor. So if you go to the Sea of Tranquility merch page, you'll get two tabs up top. One is her stuff, one is ours. So check it all out. And thanks for watching, everybody. For Neve, Chuck, Rand, and Mr. Rick LaBonte, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.